Hello, it's Gramski, and I just want to talk to you a little bit about needles. Your needle is important for all this different kind of work, and this is my needle bag. I put a book in it, but it's just a regular bag that I created myself, and I put this little book in it. I'll show you that, but first I want to talk to you about needles. This is on my mother's side. This was my grandmother, I think my great-grandmother's needle pincushion. This is a common pin. These are called common pins, and they're uncommon. When I quilt, when I'm quilting all of these circles and everything around here, I quilt with quilting thread. It's thicker than your average thread, and it won't break like your average thread might, because you only use one strand. My stitches used to be little. When I made this, my stitches were quite small. But as I got older, my stitches had to be further apart. And if you quilt, you need a certain needle called betweens. This is the smallest between I can do. It's a size 7, but the higher the number, the smaller the needle, and the smaller the needle, the more delicate the stitch. So I can only do size 7 now, but this is what a size 7 will do. That is the larger stitch. But if you want a very small stitch and you have very good eyes, I'd start with a 9. I wouldn't start with a 10, I'd start with a 9. There's 3 different kinds of needles: blunt, sharps, and betweens. And I told you about the betweens. Actually, there's more than that, but that's the 3 big categories. This is a sharp. Even though it's a large needle, it's considered a sharp because it will poke through fabric easily. If it doesn't poke through fabric easily, then it's a blunt. And if it's larger than a between and sharp, it's called a sharp. This is my favorite size, whatever size that is. This is a size 7, and look at how big this needle is compared to that. When I do any kind of hand sewing, I use sharps. But for quilting, I use betweens. And for any kind of needlework, I use blunts, because the hole is already here. This is the needle point that I'm making, and it's if you have a blunt, then your needle isn't going to stick on the thread beneath. But if you had a sharp, it would. I'm poking through this. Anyway. My backs aren't that good. This cross stitch also uses a blunt because of the open weave, and I stitch the same way. I just go down through this way, and I do one whole stitch because it's a lot faster than just poking up and poking down. So I go back and forth. Most of the time I don't even use a hoop, but your stitches will be neater if you have a hoop. But I want faster. So whenever you get a certain size Aida cloth, this has the holes in it that you can do the cross stitch or the embroidery, you want to see how many holes it has, so that when you poke through a yarn, it can be a regular yarn. It doesn't have to be cotton thread. This is a wool yarn. They used to sell wool yarn this way for crewel embroidery, but they don't sell it like this anymore. You have to go, instead of having 3 strands like this, you just go buy a strand that is similar in size and use that. So it used to be easier in the 1980s, I think. And then there's smaller thread. If you have a smaller hole, or if you want to do a cross stitch, it gets thinner and thicker depending on the look that you want. If you want it to be a fuzzier look, you would use this yarn, and if you wanted it to be more delicate, you'd use a smaller yarn. But you would always use a blunt needle because this already has holes in it. But say you have a piece of material and it doesn't have holes in it, and you want to put holes in it, then I would use your awl. I've already started poking here. There's different kinds of awls. You can get one that has a very blunt end, or one that has a very sharp end. The sharp end I use for paper. Whenever I sew on paper, I poke the hole before I sew. And it doesn't matter what you do, how you sew. I just poke the hole first, bing, 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 and then put the yarn through. This is a sashiko yarn. This is a very good yarn for this type of embroidery. But say you had wax thread. Wax thread is a thicker thread, and they put wax all along it so that you can use this for bookbinding. And you could also sew along here with it as long as you poked your holes a little bit thicker. But say I wanted to use a smaller thread, not 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 as thick and not waxed, I would still want to make my holes bigger and go through with a blunt needle. If like they did on this bag over here. Here, like this, you can do this. This has an open weave. I could cross stitch on that, and this has a finer open weave, but you can still cross stitch on this, or needle point, or crewel. You can do any of those things. So I was going to show you this book. This is the pin I made, and I thought that this yarn, this cotton thread would be thick enough in one direction, but it wasn't, and I had to go back like a cross. So if see, it came out, it wasn't fine enough. This particular Ida cloth is 14 per inch, and this Ida cloth is smaller. No, this is 14 per inch, and this is 11 per inch. The more stitches per inch, the smaller the square, right? And say you had 7 per inch, then that would be very big squares. And you would want the yarn or the thread, or whatever you're using, to coordinate with the Ida cloth. And you also want to use a blunt needle. Blunt, if it's already holy. Or if you make holes, that's fine. Okay, I was going to show you this for the people that like to make books. Whatever collection, whatever you have, you can, a friend gave me this, and I use it for a bookmark. She went to the islands, And this, someone made this to look like the islands, a group of islands. I just thought that was so pretty. And this is the section that I save. My daughter gave this to me in 2011 when she was on a hike for cancer. Okay, now this part is just like that. This is where I'm starting to draw the different types of threads, whether it's Holbein or Bosnian or Algerian eye. You know, I want to have my notes in the back here so that I can refer to them. So this is not just my needle book, which I keep all different kinds of needles in, and my threaders. Threaders are lifesavers. I also put different needles in on this side of the thing, whatever it is, and then I hang it up. I hang it like this, so that, you know, on a doorknob or a hook or something, so that I can just, oh yeah, there it is. I'll just pick it up, and it's good to go. So I wanted to tell you about the 3 different types of needles, but there's many more than 3. But at least, you know, this is the basics. How to start you. You can use wool thread. You can use just a polyester thread. You can use cotton thread. The DMC is good because it's color fast. And if you sew on here, if you want to quilt, use the betweens. And if you want to sew clothes, use your sharps. And whenever I sew, I use quilting thread because it's thicker, heavier. All right, I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.